I think it's time that we bring you into the production. So, as far as production is concerned, there's a labyrinth for us to work through and take you through, but have no fear, because we will be your guides.
We will definitely talk about, if you haven't made films, we will talk about things you will never have thought of and hopefully you will never run into.
Or you will pray to run into. Because this was a bit of both.
Quite a mixed bag.
One of the things is with a 4-day shoot, the first day we shot at the school. Now this is really interesting because in the beginning of the film, the guys are hijacking a truck. The two outlaws are hijacking a truck. And many of you might not know this, but this man played one of the truckers.
I know, it's even harder to believe now.
Yeah, you've lost a ton of weight. Before we get off on that conversation,
segue back.
We'll go right back to the day one of shooting, which is interesting because we really needed these guys to pull out guns and go, freeze! We learned that after we had acquired the guns, I think we learned this a day or two before the actual production. Basically what we needed was we needed to submit them to the campus security. They had to be approved.
Yes.
They had to be kept in a safe or some sort of box. Then we had to bring them out the day that we had to get them to bring it out the day of production. There had to be, I believe, a guard or a cop on site while we were filming. And it just was this whole process, this entire thing, all this, we could call it red tape, perhaps.
Yeah, and there was no way we were going to get it approved in
that short a time,
because
we didn't know.
We didn't have proper prop guns, but they would have totally been confiscated. We would have never seen them. They would have never come back.
One of the ways we got around this was we used sound effects. We relied on our editing. Thank you, Roberto Rosali. He was our main editor. He took off time from other projects to help us out with this. We had 2 weeks to edit. We will get to that later. But we are only explaining this as the setup for how we got away with doing this. And when we watch it, we're always like, there's no gun. But we've shown it to people who didn't realize it, and then once we mention it, they go back and, you guys didn't show a gun. So in a way, that makes me feel pretty good about it. And I think you yourself said to me that you forget sometimes that we weren't allowed to bring the gun, and that you think the gun's in the scene, but it's just that it's so fast, and you hear the sound of the gun, and he's holding it up like this. It's just that we cut from where his hand is.
It was done well. No, you can't really just, dude, you don't see it. Trust me. You don't see it. Mm-hmm. And as long as we don't tell them to look for it, they won't see it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and the first day of shooting was the shortest. I think it was 2 or 3 hours, and we were gone. We just had to get out there when the sun was coming up, and that's how we got to really
take advantage of it with
that nice little magic hour. Except in the morning, it's that orange color. We
no
really
lights. Just use
no lights. Yeah,
I think we used a 12 by 12 lame, gold lame. I think it may have been silver, but just
very, very short shoot. Day 2 of production was when we actually got to your house and started filming.
Yeah.
And I believe on day 2, we shot the scene with the 2 kids in your bedroom.
Yes.
And you were rigging up a lot of like blue lights, because I remember I was like, I want it to have very heavy blue tint. And when you watch the movie, if you listen carefully, it kind of sounds like there's a storm in the background, or there's a little bit of rain in the distance. So throughout the film, you'll notice that there's this, because toward the end of the movie, you'll see an overcast off in the distance, and you'll even hear thunder. So I kind of had this theme going of like a storm being nearby in the town. And, vampires can use this to their advantage because it's not sunny out when there's a storm nearby. And plus, I just think it kind of adds to the whole feel and tone and texture of being in a small town, and making it like this is a believable setting for the movie to be in.
Yep.
It's a really well lit scene. I liked what you guys did with that. It's a very cool kind of midnight blue.
Yeah, I remember I spent most of my time outside working a much larger light for Josh, and he rigged up a couple lights on the inside and managed to molest one of my posters just slightly. I always remember that film every time I look at that poster, though.
Yeah, and I think that was the most damage that was done to the entire house.
I think that was it, yeah. Just a slight wrinkle at the bottom of the poster.
Mm-hmm. I believe we also shot some of the scenes that took place in the living room. Largely, days 3 and 4 were spent shooting in the living room and outside in front of the house. But we did get a little bit of that in, I believe, in day 2.
Shortly after we moved out of what that room was actually my bedroom, it still is, although I've rearranged the furniture at this point. After we moved out of that bedroom, we turned that into the makeup room, and I just remember walking in and seeing hijinks of them playing games instead of doing
Guitar
makeup.
Hero. And,
oh Lord,
yeah.
I was like, I'm just gonna turn around and act like I never saw this.
A lot of the people in the crew, when they had downtime or they had fulfilled their obligations, they would go back to your room,
Yeah.
and then that's where they would have fun.
It became the pad where everybody would hang out,
Mhm.
and it was good. Luckily, a lot of our crew were skilled and more than competent. They worked quick and just did what we needed. Sometimes we hit a couple of hitches. A lot of the time it had to do with directives and orders. We wouldn't...
Yeah, there's... Without, like, this is where we have to be kind of careful because we don't want to mention names.
Step on anybody's toes either.
Right. But there were times when there was communication that had to be precise, and everybody had to be on the same page. And depending on how you phrase something or how you deliver a message, it's like a game of telephone. By the time it gets around, you said the word, you know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things where the message you sent out is totally different by the time it gets to the people that need to hear it.
And that's really where the advisory kind of kicks in. If there's anybody that you feel isn't working towards your goal together with you in pre-production,
get rid of
that. Is the point to either bump them down or kick them out. I would always roll with it, and that I think was part of the problem. Is a lot of the time people would come to you or me with concerns, and I would just be like, "Don't worry about it. We got to take care."
Or
of it.
we weren't in that position, because as a director,
supposed to be us. I'm just a group head, and all I have for keys is like one, maybe two guys working under me. But more than one person did have concerns with me, and I, not me directly, but brought up concerns with the way the production was going. And I said, well, some things are out of my control. I can talk with these people about your problems. And I think a lot of anger got misdirected at Peter most of the time. He got blamed for a lot of stuff that technically you could say he was supposed to be in charge of, but that's not the way it works in the real world.
Here's the bottom line. You were co-producer, I was writer-director.
Yes.
We made it a point to fulfill our obligations and to allow other people to fulfill theirs.
Yes.
In that process, we stepped back and did what we were told to do because we didn't want to step into other departments and start being...
As professionals, is what we were aiming for, to create a professional environment, because at that point we'd all been trained and everybody should have been performing their job up to at least 60 to 70% of a professional's capacity. But a lot of what happened should not have happened, and we're definitely just saying that when you notice somebody is working against you, don't let it keep going, because it's just going to drag the whole production down.
Without the proper communication, things begin to fall apart.
I think one of the main things with film specifically you have to do is, it doesn't matter who's working against it. You can't point fingers when the film's done, and you have to fix it in production. A lot of things can be fixed in post, but having your team not care and having people screw up production so that you can't get shots is a problem, and it needs to be dealt with early and fast. If you think that there's a problem, consult somebody else, and if it really is an issue, take it up with somebody who can mention it at the very least. Even if you're just a grip or an electric and you see an issue, at least mention it to the best boy or the key.
Yeah, figure out who you can talk to about it, because a lot of the times, when we've talked about this, people would go to the wrong people and address these issues to them, and they would go, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. Go to your first AD and tell it to them. Do not go to Greg, who is
Don't jump to the executive producer at the very least.
Yeah,
work your way up the ladder. the best boy, the key grip, they have some pull. They usually have a lot of pull because they're well liked by most of the crew because they're enjoyable to be around. You just need to work your way up and not go, okay, I'm going to pull the director aside as a grip and tell him this isn't working. You're going to get kicked off the set. Day 3, I can't really think of much particular that happened. We worked in the front room. That was probably the day that our sound guy stuffed his boom into the fan, but I think that was the highlight of the day. But with day 3, a lot of people were having issues and not communicating it properly, and it boiled over into day 4, which was part of the problem. Nothing got fixed because nobody said anything until the last day.
Yeah, as the director, if I don't know that there are issues on set until the very last day in the final hour,
yes,
all I can really do is say, I'm sorry that this exists. If I had known about this prior to now, I would have done everything in my power to have made things different and better. But please don't hold off to the last day if there is an issue that is causing any sort of tension, I think would be a good way to put it, among the production.
Yeah, tension or just lack of people knowing what they're doing. I think that's the major thing with film. Everybody has to know what they're doing. And if it feels like there's a broken leg or somebody's just not holding up their end, it leads to a lot of animosity in the crew. And I've seen it a lot with... I've worked on some additional low-budget pictures other than the ones that Peter has done through the school as well, and it leads to a lot of animosity between the crew, and I think it fractures the crew and makes them less efficient. I've seen people gnashing their teeth out in the truck when they're supposed to be running stuff inside because they think X, Y, or Z is a problem and nobody's addressing it.
One thing I think we can be really proud of about this production is that we kept everything running. Even if there were difficulties or there were problems that may have shown up, we went ahead and we ran it through till the end of the day. We were very polite about the whole thing. We didn't really start running around and screaming and yelling. We don't think that's a very productive way to take care of business. We would rather be professional about it. And if somebody else gets that way, you just have to deal with it whenever that happens.
Yeah. And I think what we're all alluding to is day 4. Even nature was almost working against us at the end of it all because Stormfront was rolling in and we almost got rained out on our last day. We almost couldn't make it because we didn't have the last shot.
I remember we heard this horrific amount of thunder in the last hour, and after a certain point, I actually stood up and I said, "We're done. We're done. We've got the last shot that we needed. We could get a couple more takes, but just for everyone's safety, I'm not going to put you guys in this position." Yeah.
We're all going home after this. And I remember, no sooner did the last person leave, I believe it was Josh with the truck, actually, and 30 minutes later it starts pouring. It's cats and dogs outside.
Day 4, the final day of shooting, also, there was some cool stuff that took place, too. We got to bring on some... our makeup effects guy, and he got to do the thing where his brother who played the vampire, got to bite one of the main characters and rip a piece of his flesh out of his shoulder and go and play with it, and blood was splurting everywhere. And that was really cool. That was also the same day that he jumped through the door and we had the fog machine going. You can barely. It's a very small touch, but it's supposed to be sort of like a burning. Like he's out in the sun and he's burning, and if you look for it, it's there and it looks pretty cool. And then that's the scene where the main character takes the knife and goes, and then he actually he spits up the fake blood and everything, and there was some fun stuff to do.
I remember that day because I remember I think I was back in my room for whatever reason, and I just remember Peter calling action and the roll going, and they were having my brother run in and jump in through the door, and for a moment there, I thought it was he ran into the door. I remember exactly what it was. He ran and jumped so hard that he slammed his head into the top of the door.
I remember that.
And the end of the take was...
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, he still came back and did it again.
Oh, God. He
was a trooper. But the thing it's funny you mentioned that because I kind of forgot about it. He ran so fast through the door, and like he was like all in character and everything, and then bam, he hit like right, and I remember watching that going, oh my god, and I just
steel
went
door
quiet,
frame. Oh, steel door frame. Oh, poor man.
and I was just kind of like, after the take, and I'm about to step forward, and then he's just like, ah! And he just like runs back into the house, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe somebody get him. Take 5. Get him some ice. We're gonna roll whenever he's good. I'm not gonna try and like force anything. Living in Florida, it would get pretty hot outside, and we had 2 of the main actors in long trench coats. Your brother was wearing a really long coat because he played the main vampire, and he was wearing that.
Yep.
And we're running in and out of the house. That's actually what's involved in the story. They have to try and at the end drag him out into the sunlight and stab him. That's part of the plot at the end of the movie. So these characters, and who are played by real actors, are running in and out of this house in the middle of the day, Florida heat, long clothes, and I actually felt kind of bad for them. And I know in the past when I've had actors in these situations, I have said, you can take the coat off in between takes, because we're out here wearing shorts and short sleeve shirts because we know what to expect. But there's nothing really they can do because this is how they're dressed for the film.
So the best we could do was turn the fans on high and stick them under it for a little bit and close the door, turn the AC back on, and pray they stop sweating long enough so that we could take another take.
When you're working in an environment like this where it is really hot and you have to get things done on a very short schedule, I did my best to be as polite as I could possibly be, express gratitude, and just make sure that I'm happy with the effort that's being made by everybody here. And I think that's really important because if I was a real dick about things, maybe, who knows, it's hard to say, like, would your brother have been inclined to have, after smashing his head, come back right away afterward? He may have been like, you know what, I'll take 30 minutes, but we were really cool and we got along really well. We were like friends by the end of the shoot and everything.
I think you guys had a lot in common, but really what may have helped more than anything is the both of us have a high threshold for pain. As Hollands, we took the pain. So to us, it was just kind of rolling with the punches, but still, the attitude did help a lot, and the fact that he felt appreciated. That was really what drove us a lot of the time, is appreciation. Because I can't speak for him, but for myself, I'm more than happy to do favors for people. I just hate feeling like I owe them that favor. If you thank me for cleaning up your room, cool. If you make me feel like I'm supposed to clean up your room, I ain't doing it.
Respect is what I think a lot of it comes down to. Because I know for me, I would have more respect for the people on set who had a mutual understanding of the respect that I gave out, they would give back.
Yes.
When that was off, when I was showing somebody a lot of respect and I was thanking them for their effort and we were trying to get on the same page, but they were kind of off.
Not reciprocating.
When there was something a little off there, or they were trying to be better than me or better than somebody else, that is bad mojo.
Yeah. Having it a one-way street where you're giving respect and gratitude and you're making your darned best to make it a cooperative experience, and the other person is fighting you for what seems like no reason, it's one of those things where it works against production rather than with it, and you end up having trouble. Just one person is all it takes in the right position, and it can make things 10 times worse than it should be.
Yeah. Before we did Sundown in Glenwood, I had done 4 short films on my own where I had my own production team, and it was pretty small, and I had the complete control over everything. Everybody was always on the same page. There was never any miscommunication going on. And when I did this movie, a lot of things were taken outside of that were beyond my control.
Yeah.
There were sacrifices I had to make with the script. There were times where I might want creative control of something, or I might want to be running a department, but since we kind of had to do things the industry way, we had to give those things up, and it was sometimes I wanted to reach out and take control of this
so
because it's my vision, And you can tell people what you want. You can give them an idea of what you're looking for. You can even show them an example. But at the end of the day, it's on them.
Yes. But having a lot of people with skill, talent, or at least just an agreeable attitude will come into play. And luckily, some of the people we turned stuff over to had skill, talent, and an agreeable attitude. So we had the trifecta. And some of the people were lacking in some of those skills, and it was an issue.
We both agree that this was a really cool experiment and an experience to have, because
would not change anything despite all the issues we had. It was one of my best memories, I would say.
I had a lot of fun with it. I'm very glad I have these memories.